you weren't so fucking awkward, bud.
I said, let's not go to work. Let's stay home and baby do these drugs. You know I got it. You know I got it. I said, let's not go to work. Let's stay home and baby do these drugs. You know I got it. You know I. I said, let's not go to work. Let's stay home and baby do these drugs. I know you want to.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Use my real name, sure.
No, yeah.
Yeah, but no, because
well-
everybody now knows me as Paulo Rage, right?
Oh yeah, well that's what I was gonna go by, but
Yeah, but that's okay.
thank you for being here though.
Hey, it's great to be here. It's good.
Yeah, it's awesome because you guys just did your first 2 weekends of the press release tour, right? Well, like the album release tour.
It's been a few weekends. It's like every single weekend we're
Oh.
playing, so it's quite a bit of gigs right now, which is good.
Yeah, I've seen the response on the album is amazing. How's the tour going? Like,
It's fun, right? Especially with some back-to-back nights and whatnot. We're doing the weekends, right? So it started right from January 4th. The album released on January 3rd, and then January 4th, we played in Calgary. Following weekend was Edmonton Red Deer, and then it was Lethbridge and Medicine Hat, and then we're doing Banff, and then we're doing Calgary again, and then Edmonton coming up at the end of February on the 29th. So we're playing quite a bit now, which is good. It's got some momentum going, so it's been really smooth so far. A little bit of wild partying, a little bit. It's not too bad, right?
Yeah.
But of course, I have a day job, so we all do. Everybody in the band has a normal job, so we have to pretty much play on the weekends mostly.
well, not to go right into it, but like I said, I haven't followed you a bit for a little bit, just watching because I actually am aware of you from the Damage Inc.
Yeah.
Actually, I do want to get into that because you were bass for the while there, and then you actually left and then came back as the guitar player.
Yeah, exactly.
How was the whole Kirk Hammett? How was that?
How'd that happen? Well,
Yeah.
See, what happened is we can backtrack later, but at that time in Lethbridge, I was having a hard time finding a band to play in, right? As a guitar player, right? And then at that point, I had actually started playing with a band. It was the same thing. I came to audition as a guitar player, and it was like the day I arrived, they're like, "Oh, our other guitar player quit. You interested in playing bass for a little while till we find a bass player?" So, and that was with Cast the Shadows in Lethbridge. And then I started playing bass with them for a while. And then all of a sudden, through seeing us, Mark from Damage Inc. saw us play. And he was like, "Hey, do you want to come play bass for us?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not really a bass player, right?" But he's like, "You're so good at it, though." I'm like, "Yeah, but I can play the role. I don't mind bass. I like playing bass. I used to play, back in high school, I played a bit because it was always hard to find a bass player. So I was always willing to say, hey, you know what, I'll play, right? I just want to play.
Yeah.
So from that, I joined in as a bass player. So I was with them for 2 years and, played the role. I tried to be Jason Newsted for the most part, right? Do my best, right? Especially with short hair and whatnot, right? And then after 2 years, I was kind of like, no, I'm a guitar player. I want to concentrate on my guitar stuff because I did have my YouTube channel and I was trying to do some guitar solo stuff. So at that time, I was like, I'm going to leave the group. And they were fine with it. I left them. That was fine. And then they found a replacement for me right away. 6 months down the road goes. And I'm driving one day. I was delivering for Canadian Linen. And I was driving on the highway between Medicine Hat and Calgary. And then Mark calls me. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll pull over. And he's like, you know what? You're a guitar player. I have a chance for you. And the lead guitar player had quit. He was quitting, actually. And he's like, this is your chance to jump in and play if you want. Right? So, and it was funny because I'd already had the Kirk Hammett ESP guitar, right? So I'm like, well, I can play the role, right? Because what had happened is not too long before I quit on bass, we had an argument one day. Between Oleg and myself, right, on a solo. And I was like, no, you're playing it wrong. And I said, let me show you. right? So I showed him how to play specific part, and then that's when like the other two guys are like, "Oh wow, you actually can play guitar." I'm like, yes, I'm a guitar player, really, right? So then after that, then I joined in for a good solid 6 months, and then we had a big disagreement over the name. Actually, we had a bit of I can't remember what they call it, but there was another Damage Inc. that had a cease and desist order against us.
Oh, wow.
For using the name Damage Inc. Because they were Damage Inc. in Vancouver, and they're like, no, you have to end it. We have legal rights to the name in Canada. So it started this kind of like big argument. And I was like, well, and then there was actually court papers sent to us one day through email.
Oh, wow.
And they actually had my name on it, like my real name. And I was like, this is not cool. Right. And then we did, I did some, I looked online to see the legal rights and whatnot. And it was, he actually had legal rights. There was Damage Entertainment Inc. out of Toronto. And they were, I guess, a small record label. And they leased the trademark name of Damage Inc. to Canada to the tribute band in Vancouver.
What?
So I was like, this is strange. So then I looked over and I'm like, you know what? The guy's got the legal rights to the name. I don't want to fight it. Let's just change the name of the band. And two of the guys were like, no, we're not changing the name. We've done 4 years with this name, right? We're not changing it. He's going to have to change it. I'm like, well, no, he actually has the legal right for this, so let's just change the name. And then the other member and myself were like, okay, well, let's use this name. Everybody, Ride the Lightning. Everybody knows that as Metallica, right? Whatnot. Nope, the other two didn't want to do it. It was a big argument. We had to play a following gig where we couldn't even put our banner up, right? We just had like the Metallica star.
Yeah,
it was all in the background. That's all we could use. Jamie had to cover his bass drum. Because we didn't want to have any legal ramifications at that time. But I said, you know what, guys, either we change the name or I'm out. Because I don't want to get into any legal battles and all that junk. So they're like, well, then you're gone. And that's how it ended.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, that's done.
How much of Metallica did you know before going into that role as like the lead guitar player?
I actually knew a lot of the solos, and I knew a lot of the music.
Yeah.
But it was strange. Like there were certain songs I wanted to play that they couldn't handle, a little too advanced, right?
Oh, okay.
So like when I had started on as guitar, I'm like, we should be playing the song Damage Incorporated because it's the name of the band, right? So I had pushed them to play that one, and it was a bit of a challenge for them. Like we never played like the songs like Battery, right, or Dyer's Eve, stuff that I always wanted to play, but we got by, and of course they played some of the covers that Metallica did, right, and whatnot, and we would play a full night, usually about 2.5 hours of Metallica, like 3 sets. So it was you had a bit of endurance to build up for that, but there were good nights. It was like a bar band, but a tribute band at the same time. So it was fun. It was fun for the run that I had at it.
Yeah. Well, like no mistake to everyone. It's kind of almost sometimes where the money is nowadays is those tribute bands and whatnot. Sometimes
it was the money was good, especially in the first year we were doing it. It was really good, and then after that, it kind of dwindled down a little bit. But yeah.
What was a couple of your favorite solos to play when you're up there?
Well, Ride the Lightning. That was my favorite one. I was so glad when they started playing that, and when I was on bass, we started learning that one. I'm like, yeah, I want to play that lead someday, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, Ride the Lightning, and then Creeping Death was always one of my favorites as well. And actually, The Unforgiven was another solo that I really enjoyed. A little bit more of a bluesy feel on it, right?
Well, then, like, I'm not too, like, obviously familiar with how Syryn started, but what qualities did you really see in them for you to be like, hey, this is my main project and what I want to do? Like, how did that come into play?
Well, I had moved back to Calgary in the beginning of 2017. And at that time, I was actually supposed to play with somebody else. When I found out I was going to be moving up, a good friend of mine, I won't mention any of it because it's not good to talk about it, but at that time, they were courting me to play with them. And a week before I moved, because my wife had already moved up, and then I was selling the house, getting everything prepared, and then the week before, they break up. So, and split into two pretty much, and it was like, which side am I going to choose and who to play with? And I was like, oh man, this is tough. Like, like I had made really good friends with one guy, and I was a longtime friend with the other. So I was like, I can't really choose a side. For a bit I did jam with one. And then after a bit, I was like, I'm gonna go test the field out, play with some different people, and that's what I did for about a year. Actually, is I just went and jammed with some different people. I guess kind of auditioned with people. It was more me going checking them out. Basement bands and startups and whatnot. And I was not really wanting to do a startup. I wanted to jump into something, right? Because I had actually back in about 2015 had auditioned for a band in Saskatchewan. Like I driven out there. They had material. I wrote a couple of solos on their demos, and I was like, they had big plans, and I was like, I'm ready to go. But that never got off the ground, right? So I'm like, I was frustrated, going, I want something going. Like I want momentum. I want to build on something. So it was funny because when I first moved to Calgary, Sloan had messaged me. And I was like, nah. And then she was like telling me a couple of the covers they were playing, and it's like power metal. I'm like, it's not my jam. I'm not really interested. I'm really into death metal at that time, right? I like the heavy stuff, right? So I kind of passed it by, So then almost a year went by, and then she messaged me again one day, or I think I might have messaged her off of a Facebook post. And she's like, you think you might be interested now? And I was like, well, I don't know. And then she actually sent me a voice clip. And I think that was around the time when Breakable, actually, the original single had come out. And I was like, oh, wow, she can sing. And I was like, wow. And I actually had it in my mind that I always wanted to be in a band with a female vocalist. Because I love a female vocalist. It's not like singing, like not guttural or screaming. I wanted an actual singing voice to play behind. And I was like, wow, this is really good. So I'm like, she sent me some of the demo tracks that they were working on. And I actually had done a little YouTube video for them. They had sent me the one track, and then right away I was like, oh, I could do a octave harmony on this part. And it was in Paradise for Demise, actually. And I had done a video of that to show them what I could kind of do. And then as soon as I showed up to jam, I don't know, within a few songs, they're like, gig's yours, you want it? So I was like, and it was a good vibe. I really enjoyed playing with them. Of course, Diva was the bass player at the time, and she's no longer, with the band. But we played, the first, I don't know, 8 or 9 months with her. And it's been great ever since. It took a while to get the album going, but now it's out, and it's just, I'm having the best time.
Well, you guys are firing on all fucking cylinders right now. That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I love how present you guys are on social media right now. Whether it's even just showing comments on YouTube or just stuff like that. You guys are very present and out there. What has been the most surprising thing about let's even just go everything you've received from everybody on the album, like the criticism? What's been the most surprising thing?
It's I kind of knew a bit of the album criticism would be the little instrumental tracks and the little bits between the songs, and there is a little bit maybe more than a normal album would have. But we did have the 6 songs. It was it's a storyline, it's a concept, a story, and it kind of blends everything in together, right? So the listener has to kind of take that into account. And then of course some people, they just want to hear the songs only, and that's why you just skip the 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. Like it's easy to pick the songs off the CD right that way.
Well, it's like it's different when you listen to a single off an album than listen to the whole album, right?
Exactly.
You hear a slower song after a heavy song, right? It feels a lot more balanced.
Yeah, and that's what I think the vibe of the album was supposed to be, the whole concept story of the Syrens, right? So that's how it just worked out in the recording process. So that's just how it happened.
Well, how different is it, writing for theme in the music, right? Compared to maybe some of your older solo stuff, right? How is it writing for? Because I don't want to use wrong. What do you pirate? Like you guys have a pirate theme to you in a way from what I've seen, right? So
we've been labeled as pirate, which we're okay with now. At first, we were kind of like pirate theme, but then when you look at the lyrics and whatnot, but we don't sound like pirate metal, like the traditional pirate metal, like Ailstorm and whatnot. We don't have that folky kind of weird music. I call it weird, but we're just straight ahead metal, right? And that's sort of what we wanted. It's just the theme has the pirate, attachment to it.
How's writing then, for an album with a complete story? Is that different?
Well, when I came in, 5 of the songs were already actually written. And then Sloan was very adamant in what she wanted the songs to be about, the storylines and whatnot. So it was just kind of, I came in and kind of helped finish off the songs, add in the melodies, add in solos. And then actually Dead Men Tell No Tales actually came together as a band, which was really fun. For me, I like playing and writing in the band atmosphere where everybody kind of brings in their own ideas. And it was just a jam that we had. I think Licks was just playing a CDE pattern, and we were just jamming that, and that's actually the chorus. And it wasn't until another jam that Byron came up with the intro and showed it to us, and then we learned it. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like Sloan was kind of like, I want to, like almost like a metalcore kind of riff, and she was kind of, describing what she wanted. And on the spot, we came up with the verse riffs, right? So it was kind of like we pieced everything together. And that song, and then she specifically wanted the song to be called Dead Men Tell No Tales. She had the idea in her mind. She knew where she wanted it inserted in the album. So that's kind of like we follow her lead. And that's how it just came together.
Is it nice to, kind of have like, because like you said, when you found something, you kind of wanted to, jump right into it and, start. It's probably nice how they have that little bit of like a skeleton. You guys just got to fill all the meat or whatever.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
They had the foundation already set, right? And then I could come in and help polish it up and add my, my style in there and my 2 bits. But it was, what I like about it is that it's not, you can't define it as one specific style. And that's what I like. Like, you can't really just call it power metal. You can't just call it thrash. You can't call it just bluesy, right? Because there's a little bit of bluesy element to it. And it's and people have had a hard time describing it actually in the reviews, which is good, right? Because then we can cater to a lot of different audiences that way.
Yes.
And that's what I kind of wanted too.
Well, that's the one nice thing, because I noticed like you guys got a lot of reviews from just a lot of metal sources than I see compared to maybe a lot of the other bands I do follow. That was really cool to see, just a lot of outsider perspective, and how most of them were 8, 9 out of 10 too, right? So,
yeah, it's of course, you feel proud when they come out that well, right? And it took a while to record the album, and at the end of it, it's like, oh yes, people are accepting it, right? Because you want, you play the music, you write it for yourself or yourselves in our case, but at the same time, you want it to be accepted by the general mass, right?
Because I do know like you do a lot of like recording on your own. How did the recording process go for that? Like, did you guys do self-recording or?
No, we used Jesse from Inside Audio, actually. We had actually done Paradise for Demise single with him first as a tester track, because he was really interested. He really wanted to record us. So we had done kind of like the tester track. And then to do the album, we actually redid the drums. We actually kept the original guitar tracks, but actually used the same guitar 5150 Kemper profile for the rest of the rhythms on the album. So, and then there was like the constant theme, like Paradise for Demise doesn't sound that much different from the rest of the album, right? So we had used Jesse for the one track, and we're like, yeah, it sounded like we liked it. So we said, let's do the whole album. So he convinced us to do the whole album with him. And then we actually started recording January last year. So it took a bit of time actually, for us to do all the tracking, the drums, the guitars, and then the vocals. Sloan took her time with the vocals, of course, making sure they were right. And then just the mixing process took way longer than we expected, because we wanted to be very meticulous about everything on like in the editing portion of the album. And then of course preparing to get the album out, the artwork, setting up for SOCAN, setting up for I think we're through CD Baby, and it takes time. So it's been a bit of a learning process for me, whereas way back in the day, we used to go to the studio, do our own cassettes, right? Back in the 90s, we did cassettes and handed cassettes out, right? It wasn't such a big production because there was no internet back then, right? So it's a different world, right?
It was, I think, in a way, like, how much, like, did you give him any input or anything, like, when you guys were going through that recording process? Just because, sometimes I think it as an advantage when a band, maybe, like, no disrespect to anyone that self-records, right? Because sometimes it's amazing, but sometimes it's always nice to get that outsider perspective in a way.
Oh, exactly. To have almost like the producer come in and give you advice or whatnot, right? Especially because, a couple of us in the group aren't that experienced yet in recording and whatnot. So it was good to have somebody there to kind of push us and, help along the way. But it was a bit of an experiment for him as well, to deal with a bunch of rock stars like us. I don't know. But it was fun in the process. We actually have a video we're going to be putting out. I guess I'll talk about it now, but we actually have a behind the scenes video of this in the studio. It's about a 15-minute long. That we're going to be releasing it probably next month.
Is it like clips throughout the whole year then?
No, well, it's clips throughout the studio.
Okay,
right.
yeah.
It's mostly me just being a goofball and recording
Yeah.
the funny moments. Right.
Yeah.
I actually had bought a cheap GoPro, and the quality is terrible, and I used it in the pre-production part, and then for the rest of it, I was like, oh man, this is bad. So I used actually my cell phone to film a lot of the other stuff. So there's some goofy stuff in there that'll be released.
So then, coming off the debut album, then what's been the most surprising show from your recent tour? I will go into surprising show overall, but I mean like since the album release.
Since the album release, Dickens was great. It was a great turnout. Edmonton was fun. We had a lot of our friends from other bands come out and support us with their. Red Deer was a bit of a surprise because it was a mixture hip-hop metal show. So it was like metal band, hip-hop artist, metal band, hip-hop artist, one after the other. So it was kind of strange.
Yeah.
And a lot of people didn't know who we were, hadn't heard of us, and we kind of won the crowd over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at first people were standing back, they had no idea what to make of us, and then all of a sudden, by the time, halfway through the set, hands pissed, fists in the air, just loving it, right? And we're like, yes, we won over a crowd here, right? So that was kind of great. And then, of course, going into Lethbridge, it was our third time in Lethbridge, and that's sort of, I have a lot of friends in Lethbridge that, not a lot of them came out this time, but I had a few come out to see us play. And then Medicine Hat was the smallest venue I've ever played in my life.
Oh, really?
It was a tiny, I don't know, maybe 50 people occupancy little pub, and it was so tiny. You play on the floor at the mainliner, and I'd never played there before, and it's the smallest gig I've ever played. So, but it was a fun night still. It was still fun.
Take it pre-album release then, because you guys did play quite a bit of shows pre-album release.
We did, yeah, because I've been with the group 2 years, almost 2 years, and we had played everything from Shocker Fest in Edmonton to playing out in BC at the Metalocalyptic Fest.
Oh, yep.
Rain all weekend. Oh my, that was just terrible. It was rained so much in one weekend. We're all camping out there. It was the gigs were the indoor part was fun, but being out in the camping was just terrible that year. But yeah, we played quite a bit actually.
So then coming through the Loudest Hell, playing once with Damage Inc. and then once with Syryn, I'm going to ask which one is your more like
Syryn,
Yeah,
obviously,
right,
just
yeah.
because it's your own music, right? To go with playing, do the Metallica tribute, it's fun in itself. I got to meet a lot of people that weekend, actually, especially Noobs,
Yeah.
right? I got to hang out with Noobs a little bit and meet him for the first time, really, because I was a huge Death Toll Rising fan. I loved Death Toll Rising, and for me to meet him and whatnot, and a few of the other people that were there that weekend, it was really cool. So, but for me, playing with Syryn, of course, playing your own material is the best, right?
Then are you guys kind of just continue on with Full Force Ahead, or
Yeah, Full Force Ahead. Brian especially keeps pushing for new songs. He wants new songs. So we're kind of, I've already written 6 new songs in parts, and then we're going to start jamming. We've already written one new song for the next album that we're actually playing live already. Called Madness Becomes Me. So what it is the second album is still going to be concept, but it's going to take the view from the Sailors this time, not the Syryn. It's going to be the opposite. So that's why we're writing now based on that. So the first now song for that we're actually playing live, and I have 6 more in pieces that are we're going to start. We have another song that's almost finished as well too, that we've been jamming. We just Sloan needs to finish off some lyrics, and then it's pretty much ready to go.
Sorry, does this mean your solo thing is completely?
Well, no, I do a little bit in my spare time. I actually have a track I'm working on right now that I'm probably going to be releasing within 2 months. And it's actually going to be an experiment. Brian's going to play the drums on it, and I'm going to do all the solo and the recording work. And we're actually going to use it as a tester if we're going to record the next album ourselves.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of a tester track to see how well of quality we can get. Because for guitar tones and whatnot, I'm very picky, and I have an idea of what I want in the next album. Now that I've gone through the first album with Syryn, and talk with Byron and I and what we kind of want, improvements on. And we want to take our time on the next one, especially. And if you're recording at home, doing it all on your own, you can really take your time on things and not feel rushed. And especially like Brian has like a home studio, home drum set, home mic, everything's mic'd up, ready to be recorded. And so we're like, well, we've already got the drum part. Like we recorded the album drums at his house, and the rest of it was done at Jesse's studio. I have the capability in my own home, and so does Byron. So we're like, let's see if maybe we can do the next album on our own. So we're actually looking at doing a couple of more dates, and then we're going to start really writing the next album.
Oh, okay.
Like spend our time to actually write it. And then I'm hoping by the summertime, off and on, depending on what we're playing, we're gonna record the next one.
So like when it comes to all self-recording, are you self-taught when it comes into recording and post-production?
Yeah,
and
I
everything?
actually, a lot of it I learned on my own. I was, some of my old videos, I had a Boss digital recording 12 track, right? And that's what I recorded my first solo album on, was that. And a lot of my demos I used to record on that. And bands I'd play in, I'd record on this, hey, what do you think of this? Burn a little CD and give it to them and say, hey, you think you can learn this? What do you think, right? So I liked recording, and I learned a lot on that little digital board. And then I said, at some point I got to move on to a computer, a real laptop with a DAW and an audio interface. And I did, within the last couple of years, that's what I started working on. So now it's like I've been learning as I go. I've never gone to a school to learn engineering for music or anything. I kind of self-taught myself. And you can in today's world, because like I go to YouTube a lot to watch videos to see how people record. I love Glenn Fricker and Ola Englund and these guys, and it's my routine. When I do my practicing warm-ups, I usually practice every Saturday and Sunday morning for at least 4 hours. I like to spend the first hour just warming up with scales and exercises, and I'll watch YouTube videos while I'm doing it, right? So I've learned a lot just from YouTube.
What do you use Pro Tools?
I actually use Reaper.
So how, coming into that decision, what made you decide to go with Reaper?
I had tried, my best friend actually had tried to get me onto Sonar. I think it's Sonar. And my old computer, I had gotten the program, and I was frustrated trying to get audio to work, and I still use my digital board, but I was trying to learn how to use a computer, and I was so frustrated that I just gave up. And then it wasn't until I got my audio interface, I actually went out and I got my laptop, and I got an audio interface, and it came with Cubase. So I started learning a little bit on Cubase, and I was frustrated, and I was like, and then a friend of mine actually, Eric from Tyrants of Chaos, he actually said to me, he goes, hey man, try Reaper. You only pay one-time fee, it's cheap, and you can customize everything, right? And he kind of talked me into it, and I was like, you know what, I'll try it. So I actually had paid the, $69 for it. And then I watched YouTube videos on how to use it, and then from there, everything I do now is just, if there's something I'm confused about, I'll just go on to YouTube, and I'll find a video, and it teaches you how to do it, right? We didn't have that in the 90s.
Well, no, that's what I love about YouTube. Literally, I've been getting into Adobe After Effects lately, and I could just 30,000 hours of just tutorials. Hey guys, welcome back to but I can also see in a way you're getting a little bit into that, because I did see you recently uploaded to your YouTube channel a rig rundown, on there, because you're in a way getting to that little bit more informational side on there.
Exactly. I've been fortunate to have my endorsement with the Rev guys, right? And then they've, I've gotten my amp through them, and I love it. I love the amp. And then I'd gotten the pedal, and then I had a couple of my friends that they've seen me live, and they just comment on how great my guitar tone is, right? And then we're actually planning for the Hyperspace Festival in Vancouver in April. And we're not going to be able to bring our amps, right? And I was like, I got to have my Rev tone. So I'm like, well, I'll get the pedal, right? And whatever power amps they supply, I'll just plug in. And then at the same time, I was like, well, I want Rev. So I was like, they have the pedal, let's try it out. And then at the same time, my buddy was like, how close is it to sound to the amp? I said, I don't know. I haven't even taken it out of the box yet. He's like, well, why don't you do a video? I'm like, I'll do a video. So I was like, I'll do a video out of it. And so I was that day, I was like, straight out of the box, this is what you're going to get. Where I had the EQ set on 5 for everything, and tried to see how close of a sound I got. And I was surprised actually how close of a sound it actually did get, right? It still has that pedal tone to it, that high end fizziness a little bit in the distortion, but otherwise it matched pretty well.
So being so specific on your tone, then how was it getting to the sponsorship with Rev or your endorsement? Sorry.
Yeah, it was actually through WB Gear. I had actually just applied through it online.
Okay.
And then Hoogie, who runs WB Gear, had seen my videos and whatnot, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll sign you on." Right. So they're really He's really supportive. He's actually the drum tech for Shinedown. Or no, sorry, bass tech. He's the bass tech for Eric Bass for Shinedown.
Cool.
Right, and he used to be the guitar tech for Willie from Lamb of God.
Oh,
right, so he's on the road a lot, but then he deals, with WB Gear when he's home. So he's, he knows a lot of the industry people with gear, right? Like I don't know if he was even at NAMM this year, but I know he was last year. So he knows a lot of the people around that. So it's kind of like you got the companies that kind of join in with WB Gear, and from there they give the endorsements to people that they feel are worthy of it, right? So that could help promote the brands and whatnot. So, and I'm all about promoting. I love promoting brands. I love gear. I love guitars. Everybody knows that. So, and I can talk to death about gear. So I was like, so obviously he saw that in me, right? So that's been great for me so far.
Well, that's the one thing I love is so I'm obviously gonna be a little biased because my favorite guitar brand is Jackson.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, there we go.
I even know because your dog's name is Jackson, right? So I was like, what was your first Jackson experience like? How did that all come to?
My first Jackson experience. Yeah. Wow. Well, actually, let's go back to when I first started playing. Actually, okay. I was influenced by an older cousin, and he actually had a black BC Rich Ironbird. And I was influenced I wanted a BC Rich just like my cousin Phil, right? So, and this is like, oh my God, 1989. So, and I used to spend my summers at his house, right? So he had influenced me, and then I was like, oh man, it's so cool. And this is in the era of Randy Rhoads and Def Leppard and Motley Crue. And I remember the first time I saw Zakk Wylde on Much Music, I thought he was just the wildest guy ever. So he influenced me that into the metal stuff, and I just love metal guitars, right? And then I'd got my first BC Rich, was sort of like a Strat style that was red. And I played that for a few years. And then I had an Ibanez, my first kind of like locking system, Floyd Rose system on it. But when I started getting into like Sepultura and Andreas Kisser with his black Randy Rhoads, and he had a white one as well. And I was like, oh man, that is so cool. And then Jackson was kind of big in the late 80s, right? Early 90s. So I was like, oh, I always wanted a Jackson. And there was actually, I can't remember what it was in my high school, actually had a USA Jackson back then, like a soloist. And I thought, oh, man, that is the coolest guitar ever. But they were bloody expensive, right? Because back in the day, you either had a really crappy low-end guitar or a high-end. There was no really middle ground for guitars back then. So it wasn't, it was years until I actually had my first Jackson, I think. Oh wow! Because I've owned, actually, I've got a list of over 50 guitars I've owned in my life, which is it's sad in a way. But I remember the one guitar I always wanted was a black Randy Rhoads USA, and that was like the one guitar I always wanted. But I'd always settled for something else. And it wasn't until about I think it was about 2002. I'll say about 2002. When I was living in Calgary here, I wasn't even in the scene. I wasn't playing in any bands, but I had gotten a RR3, the Japanese RR3, and that was like my first Jackson. And I didn't play it a great deal, but I just loved having a Jackson. And I wanted a USA, but obviously money-wise, right? So it wasn't until like a few years ago that when I had ended my endorsement with Legator, because I actually had an endorsement with them for 3 years, is that after learning that experience, I said, you know what, if I'm going to have to pay for guitars, I'm going to get what I really want. And then that's when I was like, I'm going to get that Jack. I had a Les Paul, actually, because there was a band I had played in at one time where we were more Gibson style. It was more of like an alternative rock. So I had a Les Paul, and then I said, I'm going to get rid of my Les Paul and get what I really want. And I kind of traded the Les Paul towards that black one, and it was like, oh, this is the guitar I've always wanted. If I would have just bought this many years ago, I wouldn't have gone through all these other guitars that I've owned, right? So of course I love it so much, I said, I'm gonna order a white one, because just like Andreas Kisser had the black and he had the white one on Beneath the Remains tour, I think it was. Or no, the Arise tour. It was during the Arise tour. He had the two and it's Charvel, right? But I was like, oh, I gotta have the black and I gotta have the white one, right? So I had ordered the white one. And then I had kind of intentions that, hey, moving to Calgary, I'm going to find myself a metal band, thrash band, something, and then I'm going to be set for guitars. And then the Syryn thing kind of happened. And I was like, and then Byron plays this Kramer, which is an offset black V. And I'm like, well, for both playing black offset Vs, it'll kind of look kind of strange, right? So, and then I was out shopping one day and I was like, oh, there's a Kelly model at the Guitar Works. I'm going to go check it out, right? Because I'm actually a big Marty Friedman fan too, right? Especially in his, back in the days of Rest in Peace and Countdown to Extinction. I loved his guitar tone and I loved the look of the Kelly. I'm like, I'm going to go try the Kelly, right? So then, of course, I fell in love with the Kelly. So here I am with 3 USA guitars, 3 USA Jacksons all of a sudden, right? So
that's funny. So then taking it back, just because you were mentioning, you remember when so many bands were kind of like in their prime back in the day. Where do you think the music industry is today then?
Oh, it's great now. It's what had actually happened to me was I was playing in bands back in my hometown of Sault Ste. Marie. And punk was really big at that time, right? Like I had to play in a kind of a punk metal crossover band called Gut Wrench, where we played like NoFX and Descendants and stuff like that, which I wasn't really into. But the originals were heavier, which was cool. But it was coming into this was the mid 90s. And all of a sudden it was sort of uncool to play guitar solos, right? And I was frustrated with that, right? And it's like, you play a ripping solo on stage and nobody cares, right? And it was kind of, it's discouraging a bit. And I was like, well, this is what I love to do. Right. And then I was kind of like guitar at that time, and like Korn came out, it was 7-string, everything was starting to become down tuned and no solos. Right. The only guy that was still ripping was probably Zakk Wylde and Dimebag Darrell. Right. The only guy, and Slayer maybe. So it was kind of discouraged that I didn't play much for 10 years actually when I had moved to Calgary. Because when I had left Sault Ste. Marie, I actually had decided I was going to grow up. Yeah, that worked. I cut my hair off, sold my gear, kept one guitar, and I'd always have a guitar with me, but I didn't play music anymore, right? I tried to live a normal life per se, where I, 9-to-5 jobs, and, I worked my butt off for years in here in Calgary. And I'd moved away. I'd moved back to Ontario for a bit. And then when I moved to Lethbridge to be with my wife, actually, her mother actually kind of influenced me to kind of go back into music a little bit. Her and an old friend, actually, when I had moved to Lethbridge, old buddy of mine from Sault Ste. Marie was living here in Calgary. And he had kind of said, he's like, hey, you're here. Tim, which was a friend of ours, he was in a bar band with, he's moving back to Sault Ste. Marie, and I need a lead guitar player. I'm like, oh man, I haven't played in a band in years, right? I wasn't very serious or anything, right? I'd still practice here and there, jam a little bit. But he's like, no man, you got to play with us. You got to come jam, right? You were such a shredder back in the day. I'm like, well, that was back in the day when it was still cool to shred, right? So he's like, no man, come, it's cool again, like we do these bar band songs, like the Bon Jovi and Motley Crue and stuff. So I was like, well, people are into it, I guess, right? But for years it was like I go to pubs and it was like alternative music or whatnot, right? And it wasn't metal to me. I didn't know the metal scene because I didn't know anybody in the metal scene like throughout the 2000s, right? So that, and I got slowly back into it. This would have been about 2007, 2008, right? And then I slowly got back into playing into bands and everything kind of cool. And then metal kind of reemerged more. And all of a sudden, it was like MySpace was like big on bands, right? And that's how I discovered Death Toll Rising, was through like MySpace.
Oh, wow.
Right? And I started finding, then all of a sudden, it's like, hey, man, metal's back. You have all like, Children of Bodom. You had Chris Broderick now and Megadeth. Like shredding was cool again. So I was like, hey, I can live with this. But for like a good part of the 2000s, it was kind of uncool, right? And I didn't dig that at all, right? But now it's kind of like I feel like it's come full circle again, right? It was interesting. I was watching an interview recently. I can't remember who it was with because I watch so much YouTube, and they were saying that this generation now is missing the guitar gods, right? And they were saying that you had the guitar gods back in the day. You had the Slash and the Zakk Wylde and the Dimebag Darrell, and now today so many people are playing guitar, but they're not living like rock stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, like nobody's has the big persona, right? So the
Yeah.
big ego, I guess, right? So um, I don't know. Not that I'm trying to fit that bill or anything, but part of the reason why I do have the Paulo Rage is sort of my alter ego, because when I do go on stage, I am kind of a different person. I do try to live out more of a character, and I kind of learned that from playing with Damage Inc. Actually, just going out playing, you know, a tribute act. You're out there to play like you're someone else. You're there to be someone else, really, and to kind of put on a show. And that kind of taught me, hey, you know what, you know, to be bigger than myself. And I kind of, it's carried on to the stage now, right? Where it's kind of like, I love playing live, right? And for those 10 plus years I didn't play on stage, I missed it so much that when I started playing live again, I was like, yeah, this is great, right? You know, back in the day, actually, I'd have to be liquored up a bit to get the courage to go on stage. And now it's like, I don't need none of that now. I just want to be up there. Right. So it's I think everything's come full circle, and metal is better than ever now. Right. And I think maybe technology is good in that way, that you can do, like, a lot of bands can record on their own. They can do so much at home on their own. They can promote on the internet. Because when I first started playing, there was no internet. The only way it was word of mouth more than anything. Like even like in the Bay Area thrash, right? Like everything was word of mouth. You know, tape trading they did back in the day, right? And through magazines, where everything is so open world now, right? Like think of like even video game comparison, right? Think about like going from Nintendo, like PlayStation 4, right? Like like even Grand Theft Auto with big open world. That's what I feel like the internet's done for the music scene now. Is everything's so big.
Are you pro Spotify?
Yeah, we're on Spotify. We did the Spotify, the iTunes.
Well, like I do like how you guys are that, but like you yourself, are you like pro Spotify? Are you for Spotify? Or are you against
It's
Spotify?
strange. Like I don't really use Spotify because I'm still old school, or I like to go and buy CDs. I'll still go to Sunrise Records and I'll go buy CDs. You know, I'll get a couple, you know, 2 or 3 a month. When we play live, or if I go to a show and a band really amazes me live, I will immediately go buy their CD, right? Because and I want to have that in my hand. It's strange for a generation, for me to think now that like some younger people don't even have CDs. They don't have something physical in their hand of a band. Although now you got merch, right? So a lot of people buy T-shirts and they buy the merch, right? But like I have a nephew in Windsor, Ontario, who's in his early 20s, and he's a touring drummer. And he doesn't own a CD. He's never owned a CD in his life. Everything's on a computer, right? And it's like, well, what happens if your computer crashes? And he's like, well, it's on my phone. Well, but like, because I know there's like iTunes where everything's saved in a cloud. But to me, that I'm old school, or I want to have the collecting CD, right? So I have probably about 400 CDs at home, right?
You get an experience like no other. I'm a big vinyl collector. I listen to a lot of my stuff on vinyl. The only complaint I have is 3 songs and you got to switch to the side.
I never was part of the vinyl generation, and I never really got into vinyl. Good friend of mine actually from the band Rectify, Thunder Bay, Matt, he's big into the vinyl, and he actually played me. He's like, have you ever heard Machine Head's Unto the Locust on vinyl? You got to hear it on vinyl. It'll blow your mind how good it sounds. So he played it for me when I was visiting him in Thunder Bay, and I was like, oh man, that does sound pretty darn good, you know. But I'm still, you know, I actually had a big cassette collection back in the day, and then I had to move over to CD. So now I've got like a cassette collection where I've got the doubles and CD now. But
so then now that you've, you know, kind of been in the in and outs, you kind of seen quite a bit. You're a little more experienced into the music industry. What's your drink look like before you go on stage? Like, do you have a limit on how much you do? You just don't drink at all before stage, or?
I try to limit myself to only a couple a night. Usually I have to drive home. If it's a local gig, you drive home, or try to be the responsible one in the band. Brian doesn't drink at all. Right? Brian is completely sober, and then I don't like to drink much because the older you get, the worse the hangovers are. And then there's a few people in our band that still like to party pretty hard, so somebody's got to look after them, right? So, but it's all fun. But no, like back in the day, I used to have to be buzzed to get up on stage. I used to be so nervous. But then it's like nowadays I'm so calm. Like even I think Medicine Hat, I didn't even have a drink. I was drinking water all night, right? So I don't even feel like I don't have those nerves like I used to.
Well, that's what I love when you said like sometimes like you play that character. You guys definitely have like the full theme to it though, with the story of the sirens with the album, right? It's kind of like the full show experience, right? To add to the end there. Um, so how maybe how much different is your first show with Siren to like now? Obviously, you guys like sound tighter. I'm assuming just
Yeah,
more chemistry.
definitely tighter. Brian, especially, he plays to a click track, right? He's got his earbuds and his monitors. He plays to a click track. So it's nice because everything is always exactly on time with him. And he's very consistent as a drummer, and we follow him. And of course, now we've amped up our stage show more. We actually have monitors with videos for every song, right? Which is kind of cool. So there's a little bit more production happening that none of the other bands are really doing. So, but from the first few gigs, things might have been a little bit looser, I guess. But over time, you're naturally going to get tighter as a group, right?
So you've talked about how you got into the Jacks and everything, but you never really are you all self-taught when it comes to guitar because you're a fucking great guitar player,
Oh,
right?
thank you.
So
Thanks.
how'd that come to about?
Well, my mother is actually a country singer. She was like folk and country, and there was always an acoustic guitar around the house, right? So, but I couldn't stand her singing when I was a kid, which is kind of funny, but I love her singing now. She sings like Patsy Cline and whatnot, right? But so there was always an acoustic around, but I didn't really get that interest until I had spent, the summers with my cousin. And then after, it's like I came home and I wanted to get lessons. So my mom said, well, you can use my acoustic. I'll get you some guitar lessons. So I had actually taken about 6 months lessons with the acoustic with a local guy in my hometown of Sault Ste. Marie, Frank Adamo. And he had actually, it was kind of cool. You go into his home, into his basement. He actually had like a small studio in his house, like a big mixing board, and he had like a small studio. So it was like, ooh, this is cool, right? And you walk in, and he would teach you the basics, the chords, how to do a fret walk, and that was the first things I'd learned. Takes 6, I think the first song I ever learned was "Every Rose Has Its Thorn" by Poison, right? Like I'm learning the kind of easy strumming stuff, and then it's like I really want an electric guitar, right? Because he had like this white Kramer like Super Strat, and I was like, well, that's so cool. So then it wasn't like that one Christmas that I finally got my red BC Rich, and but within a couple of months, then all of a sudden it's like my mother couldn't afford the lessons anymore. So I was kind of like, well, I guess I could go get books and learn from the books at the music store. So I had gone to the music store, and actually it's still my Bible today, but it's the Speed Mechanics for Lead Guitar by Troy Statina. And I still use it to this day. I'm still trying to master stuff in that book. And it was that book that I had gotten at 14 years old that it's like ever since it's been my go-to book. I've actually bought it and given it to other people.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's how much it affected, and I learned from. And along the way, I'd gotten other books. But what was really cool is when I had gotten into high school, and like for us in Ontario, we only had grade school till 8, and then high school 9 to 12. We didn't have like middle school. So when I started high school, we actually had guitar class in our high school.
Oh wow!
It was a class where you actually had guitar. So what it was is I skipped the 10th grade guitar, went straight to the 11th grade because I was already advanced enough. And I had my best friend with me, and and that's where I met Matt from Rectify, and it's a class of 30 people strumming acoustics, right? And the school supplied 30 acoustics, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it
Good
sucked
on
when
them,
somebody.
like,
Yeah,
seriously.
it was a really good program. Mark Goff was the teacher, and he was actually a drummer in a local bar band, which was cool. He was a really cool teacher. He used to walk around the class with a Stratocaster. He was left-handed. He had a Stratocaster with a wireless pack, and we'd walk around the class playing, and he'd be teaching us the songs, right? Like Tom Petty and Bryan Adams and all this stuff, but I was already advanced enough, right? And he was teaching us theory, like the scales and what's a major, what's a minor, a harmonic minor, how to, even a little bit of songwriting and whatnot, and it was really cool. And then what had happened is the following year, I decided to go back and take grade 10 guitar just for the credit. So I had walked in that day of class, and he's like, Paul, really? You're in this class? You're not a beginner, because it was like the beginner's class, right? I'm like, well, I need the credit, man. I could come and play guitar, right? And he's like, well, I'm not going to make it easy for you. Right. So he actually had me help him teach the class.
Oh wow!
I would actually help teach the students around me. Right. And I'd show off, right? I used to show off, like, cause when we taught us the basic major scale, and then everybody at one after another would take their turn to play it. And of course, I'm like, he would ask you, he's like, and and you're playing in what key, right? I'm like, A, up one octave, right? So I'm up really high on the acoustic and I play as fast as I can, right? And then he saw me, he's like, I'm only giving you a 95 for showing off. So it was really fun. So he was really a great teacher. And what actually had happened is the following semester after that class, I actually joined music class, just like regular music class. And I had him as the teacher. It was supposed to be the actual music teacher, but they were overwhelmed, so he had to do. So I walked in that day, and he's like, "Really? Are you taking a music class now?" I'm like, "Yeah." So he goes, "Well, you know what? As a musician, I know what kind of music you're into. I want to get you on the drums." He goes, "But first, you have to earn your way there." So I played a month of the clarinet. I hated it, but I was determined. I want to get on the drums. So after a month, I got on the drums. And it wasn't the normal orchestral kind of playing. He actually had me on a 4-piece drum kit and told me, just play AC/DC beats. And that's what I did. We're playing orchestra music and I'm playing AC/DC beats. So if the odd time I used to do a drummel hit a cymbal, the whole class would turn around and be like, really? Right? So it was so much fun. But I had learned so much, not just guitar, but about music in high school, which was really fun.
That's amazing on the school.
Yeah. It was such a great program that they had. We all learned so much from that. Like me and my buddies that we all took that course.
Wow.
Those few courses, yeah.
So then getting to even the more beginnings of everything, how'd you get into metal then? Because you said your mom was a country singer. Hopefully she didn't see your Instagram story the other day.
Oh, I know. She's not even on the internet.
Okay.
But like my cousins had influenced me, right? Being around in like the summers. I used to spend like the summers from the age of 10 to 12. I used to spend all summer there, and like listening to watching much music back in the day. We'd be out all day playing, but in the evenings it'd be sitting in the house. We all watch much music, right? And you'd see all the Bon Jovi and Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. I remember came out. I was like, wow, what is this band? And Rat and Dawkins and all this stuff was playing on much music back in the day, right? So, and then actually, this is gonna be funny for you, but I was in school one day and I was getting into like Motley Crue and all this, and a buddy, a schoolmate, he said, "Have you ever heard of Metallica?" And I'm like, yeah, I've seen the cassettes in my cousin's house. I haven't listened to it though. He's like, "You got to listen to Metallica, man. They're the heaviest stuff out there." So I'm like, really, right? So I had gone to Kmart and I went and bought whatever I could find, and they had Injustice for All, and it had just come out. And I was like, oh, I'll buy this. It was a really cool cover. I went home. I popped it in my Walkman. I hated it. I absolutely hated it. But I was like, I just spent my allowance on this thing. I'm going to make myself like it. But I think it was the recording sound that I hated more than anything on the album, right? But I grew to love it from that. But then it also opened up the door for so much other music, right? And then I remember Rust in Peace. I remember seeing the video for Holy Wars on Much Music, and I'm like, oh man, who's the Megadeth, man? That's cool. So I went out Kmart right away, bought the cassette for Rust in Peace, fell in love with that. But the one band that I really was Testament. When I discovered Testament, I was like, I had to buy every cassette of them that I could find. Skolnick to me was my god. He still is. I love Skolnick.
100% my favorite.
Oh, his style, his fluid legatos and his sweeping techniques. I just loved it, right? So that was sort of my guy. Him and Friedman, those two guys, right? Were kind of like and I would learn like in pieces some of their solos and kind of learn as much as I could. But of course, the early 90s happened and it started getting uncool. Alternative came in, grunge came in, and it was kind of a strange era. I did like Alice in Chains. I thought they were pretty cool, but I wasn't too big on like the Pearl Jams and Soundgarden and all that. I wasn't big on any of the music because it wasn't metal. There wasn't shredding solos and stuff, right? So it's kind of like, but we still had Pantera, right? And I loved Dimebag Darrell. But his videos is what really made people love Dimebag Darrell's, because I remember when the home videos used to come out and I used to buy them on VHS. And I used to watch those over and over again, and I just thought they were the coolest MFs on the planet, man. Like
Yeah.
just the stuff they would do. So that's why now I'm in the same thing. I want to take videos and when we're doing stuff on the road, and I try to take videos of us even on stage now. But it's like it was said that Pantera saved metal in the 90s, and I do believe that they helped keep it alive, because it was kind of dying out when the whole grunge thing was happening. It really did, right? And all of a sudden, even Skid Row tried to go grunge.
Oh, it's so funny with that Skid Row. A year ago, I went and seen Sebastian Bach, right, live, and it's so funny. So I go there with this girl, and we're the youngest people there, like by a lot, right? This guy comes up to me, and he's just like, "Do you even know who Sebastian Bach is?" And I was like, "I'm not gonna lie, man. I only know the first 2 Skid Row albums, right?" That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus. So then, yeah, we were looking up at your YouTube earlier, actually. We're looking at the I'm Broken one. If you could pull that up, please, Tyler. That'd be amazing. So when are you going to learn a Skolnick one? Or no?
I'm working on a couple, actually. I'm working on some.
The pinch harmonic you hit in this is, oh my God, this is the most filthiest thing I've ever heard. We were just smiling watching this a couple times earlier. How long did this take?
Like to learn?
Yeah.
This lick right here was the hard part. That was getting that down at a good speed and to play it clean. Took me the longest. But this is about 3 or 4 takes.
Really?
Yeah. And it's in stereo. I do 2. So that's why you get kind of that natural chorus effect, just like Dime did in the studio. He did it twice, tried to overlap.
Oh, that's... What made you go with that one then, out of all?
That's my favorite. That was my favorite Dimebag solo, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's kind of like I'm getting to the point where I learn a lot of the solos that I can from my favorite artists, but I don't like to perform them until I've mastered them all. So like Tornado of Souls is going to be the death of me trying to master that one. That's one of the ones I'm working on. But my all-time favorite guitar solo is Practice What You Preach.
Okay.
And that is not a short solo. That is a long solo. There's so many techniques in that it's taking me some time to master, but that's like my all-time. I already have the rhythm track already down. So like I've got a whole bunch now that I've got the rhythm tracks already recorded, and I'm working up to speed on all of them and then learning the little licks. I do have a couple more Dimebags in there as well. I've got a Randy Rhoads one in there as well. So I'm kind of slowly working them in, but it's with Syryn, of course, that's my priority, right? So it's kind of like when I have the spare time, then I will concentrate on that again. But of course, I'm trying to balance, having a full-time day job, being married, I'm lucky enough that I don't have children. I can't imagine having time to do a lot of what I want to do if I had children. And my wife and I joke around saying that if we had children, I wouldn't be playing music. And I'm like, oh, well, then we don't have children. Plain and simple, right?
Yeah.
So, because to me, music is my child in a way, because it was decided years ago. I've been married 10 years. And we decided a long time ago that we weren't going to have children. And I said, well, I want to leave some sort of legacy then, right? Because a lot of people, children is their legacy. And for me, I said, my legacy is going to be music. And it's whatever music I can put into the world. And that's what I want to be remembered for. So now, of course, now that I'm getting up in age, I am wanting to go full force. I want to do as much as I can, right? I have auditioned for other bands in the last few years. But unless it fits now around Syryn, I don't want to do it, right? I do have a side project with my best friend, actually, called Raged. But unfortunately, we haven't had time for it. We have a few songs already written, but it's just him and I. We record demos together. We write all the parts together. But we figured that once we have enough for a half-hour set, recorded, ready to go, then we'll find a bass player and a drummer, put a band together, and go out and do some gigs. So it's kind of like a side project, down the road kind of thing. But it's kind of like I got to try to make the time for that. But right now, it's sort of like I told him, I said, Syryn's kind of my priority right now. So if things slow down for a bit, then, then we can concentrate on that again. But right now, it's like full bore with Syryn, because things are we're on a great high right now.
It's got to be definitely more, just for me, who's not as advanced at playing guitar, being able to set those challenges for higher bands? Like for example, like one, like I would love Over the Wall from Testament. Oh man, that solo! Oh my god! If I
And
could
he
go-
was so young.
Oh yeah, that
He was so he was I think he was barely out of high school at that point, right?
Yeah, because I was always a pretty big Testament fan, but what really got me like back into them and just like visiting all their albums was the Dark Roots of Thrash DVD. Yeah, so they had the DVD where they played the whole album and like a bunch of others, right? And it just brought a love right back there.
Oh, when Skolnick left Testament after the Ritual album, like during that tour, when I found I was devastated. And then I heard he went to go play jazz. I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? I understand it now. I've read his autobiography, actually, which is a pretty good autobiography. But yeah, at the time I was like, why leave for jazz? Really? But now it's, I get it. I get it. Right. He wants to learn as much. He has that wanting to learn, like the knowledge of guitar. Right. So I kind of feel I associate that way because I like to learn about theory. I like to learn about scales. I'm always practicing. I'm always going through learning new exercises. Right now, I'm really concentrating on sweep picking because I feel that's kind of like I need to work on that because it's not my strong point. So I do put a little bit of sweeping into some of the work we're doing now. But like even the newest song now, there's a more soloing.
Okay.
For some of the newer Syryn stuff, like the 2 new songs we have, there's a lot more solos. And there's going to be a lot more solos from now on, right? So.
Tyler, if you could bring up just his YouTube again there, please. What I loved about some of your originals is the vocals aren't like, you don't need vocals with the way you write your lead guitar work there. So I'm assuming there's got to be quite a bit of theory going into that, because I was telling them, even if you want to do the On the Run playthrough, please. I fucking love this one. So how much is it just jamming and theory goes into writing a song like this?
Kind of hand in hand a bit, right? Because what it is it's all based on D minor. It's in drop D, half step down. So for it, it's kind of like I know I need to be in the key of D minor, and the whole song's based on the key of D minor. But at the same time, it's a bit of feel at the same time. It's playing around within, like, I don't like to stay in the pentatonic box. I like to play around a little bit. So it's kind of like I experiment, and it's kind of like I don't follow theory at sometimes. I just try to find the right notes, try to use my ear a bit, and kind of go outside of the box where I can. But at the same time, I want to keep kind of a melody and a theme going throughout of it, right? And it's interesting when, like, you're inspired by something. The music for this whole song came together in one evening.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just, like, all the riffs came like that. It was so quick. Whereas sometimes you're sitting there and you're, like, trying to find the right notes. You're sitting there trying to play different rhythms, and just nothing's coming together. And then there's other times where I'll be on the train on my way home, and I'll get an idea in my head. It's like, oh, I got all these ideas, right? And you get home and just try to play them out right away. And hit that record button and get all your ideas out.
Yeah.
It's inspiration, sometimes.
This is, like, for me, this is your perfect classic heavy metal fucking just banger. Like, this is what heavy metal I want to listen to when I drink beer, to be honest. Just your classic.
It's fun. This was
heavy
more
metal.
of a fun song.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I love the faces too. You got to do it, right? It shows. It adds so much.
And of course, I go back and forth between the white and the black.
Yeah.
Just for the contrast.
I think you have different pickups now, though, don't you? Or?
Yes, they both have blackouts now.
Oh, okay.
I prefer the blackouts, except in my Kelly.
Oh.
There's something magical about that Kelly, and
Really?
that's it's supposed to have the jazz and the JB pickups in it, like the Seymour Duncans. But I've A/B'd that guitar against this white one when it had the stock pickups. I have a Dinky that has the stock Seymour Duncan pickups. Even my Stratocaster has a JB in it. And that guitar just sounds nothing like those.
Really?
There's something magical about that Kelly that there's no way I'm going to change the pickups on that guitar, because so much more output. It's like, it almost seems like it's a Duncan distortion in the bridge, because it's just got much more output than a normal JB.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I want to pull out the pickup to say, did they screw up at the factory with this one and put a distortion in this? Because this thing, it's got a nice hotness to that pickup, and it just sounds great. I've already told the band that I don't know if I'm going to be playing that one much live anymore. I kind of want to keep it at home just for recording, just because it sounds so good, and I want to keep my V's more for live now with the blackout pickups.
Is it just passive on your Kellys?
Yeah, it's just the passive Duncans,
Really?
the stock Duncans, and there's just something about the sound of that guitar. And you always hear about people talking about that once in a while. They say there's just the guitar that they have. It just sounds so magical, and there's something special about it. And that Kelly is that way for me. Of any guitar I've ever owned, and it's funny because I love the Flying V's. I love the Randy Rhoads Flying V's, but there's just something about that Kelly model that's just magical. I love it.
Is the Kelly one piece too then?
It's because that's the thing. It's the same exact specs as my two Randy Rhoads guitars. It's just a different shape.
Oh.
And that's what's so strange. It even has the same pickups, electronics, Floyd Rose, ebony fretboard, alder body, neck through maple. It's supposed to be the exact same specs except a different shape. But it just sounds different for some reason. I don't get it.
How long was your learning process on Floyd Rose? Because I worked with Floyd Rose for a while, and I tried to change the tuning on my guitar, like a full step down, like drop C or something. There's a lot of bank cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards going underneath that bridge.
It's you have to learn to be patient with the Floyd. I'll usually, if I change a tuning on a Floyd Rose, I'll do it while I'm watching a Calgary Flames hockey game. Usually, while I'm watching the game, I'll change. That's when I usually change strings. Actually, if I'm going to put fresh strings on my guitars, I usually do when watching a hockey game. But it takes time. My first Floyd Rose guitars was my first Ibanez, which was like an EX series, 370 or something, and it wasn't that great at all for staying in tune. So I had to learn to really master that Floyd. It was like a license by Ibanez Floyd. It wasn't even a real one. So I had to learn how to deal with that. And then over the years, I've had a lot of guitars with Floyd Rose that I've just gotten used to it. Like even right now, I have a Japanese Randy Rhoads RR24. And that one, I don't know if it's the springs in it, but every time I use the bar, it automatically will go a little flat. So I've gotten used to when I play that guitar, I've used it live a couple of times now, that after I use the whammy bar, before I play the next riff, I quickly go back on the whammy bar to put it back in tune. It's something finicky about certain guitars, right? But the USA Jacksons, for the most part, stay in tune, which is great.
Not too too off tangent here, but this will just be fun. Because you're a Flames fan, I'm an Oilers fan. Let's just make a prediction. We just about to hit All-Star break. I know everyone's going to hear this a couple weeks after, but so what's going to be what's your prediction? Halfway through, we've got 35 games left around there, 40 games left.
I think it'll be something. In the standings, I don't want them to play each other in the first round, but I predict them playing each other maybe the second round.
Okay.
And I think that'll be a heck of a series to have a Battle of Alberta in the playoffs. We haven't had that in many, many years, I don't think.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So that would love to see that. Because both teams are good this year, and they're both looking like they're going to both make the playoffs, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely, I'm looking forward to the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I do agree. I hope it's not a first round. I hope it is second round, but also how much that would do for like the bars and stuff in Calgary and Edmonton, right?
Oh, exactly.
That's everyone's revenue 200% throughout those.
Well, just getting in playoff games, right? Period, right? And
let's make the playoffs first.
Oh yeah, it'll be great for the cities, like especially to have that rivalry, the fun rivalry going.
Yeah, especially after the last game there, right? So.
Well, I'm looking forward to the rematch when Cassian comes back, right? That'll be good.
Is it a rematch or is it just one versus no one because no one's doing anything?
Yeah,
right?
I know Kachuk cowers. He doesn't want to fight.
Hey, he's a great player. I'm not biased. Kachuk's a great player, but I've said this for years. I personally think he's a little bit of he's one of those guys like Lucic. You fucking hate Lucic when he's not on your team. And then when he gets to your team, you're like, I love this guy.
That's Marchand for me. That's Marchand for me. I can't stand that guy. But if he was on my team, I think I'd like him.
Yeah, fuck him and his weird nose, man. Seriously. Well, then really, I know you guys are firing on all cylinders, but What's next? Like, what do you guys got next? It's beginning of January. You guys are coming out huge right
For this
now.
album, yeah.
What do you guys want to accomplish by the end of 2020 here?
We're hoping to play a lot into the summer.
Mhm.
We're looking to play some festivals, some more festivals. I don't know yet what we're gonna get on. Sloan actually deals with a lot of the booking because she's a promoter naturally. She deals with most of that. She just kind of, are you available this day, kind of thing to the rest of us. So I'm hoping to play a lot come summer. And when we're not playing, we want to be recording the next album, right? Especially Brian and I, we really want to go gun ho in the next one. And that's why I've got so much material already written. And it's kind of interesting because I had so much stuff already. And then it's kind of like, hey, would this fit with Syryn? So then it's like I re-recorded to standard tuning because we play in standard tuning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of
like straight standard.
Yeah, straight E standard,
Wow,
right?
okay.
So then it's kind of like, okay, well, this fit. And then there's a couple of riffs that I'm like, hey, this actually sounds really great in standard. So I'll play it for the band. And there's a few in there they really love. And they're, oh, we expand on this and that. And it's like, yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. We got some cool stuff coming.
Fucking A. Well, we're going to link, obviously, everything down in the description, especially your YouTube channel. What can we expect for your YouTube channel? Are you going to release the behind the scenes on the Syryn YouTube channel?
Yeah,
then?
that'll be with the Syryn.
Okay.
The Syryn stuff. It's more goofy stuff. It's nothing major. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
for fun, right?
Yeah.
It's me being a goofball more than anything in the studio
Yeah.
because I love the studio atmosphere, right? I love being in the studio. But for my own YouTube, I do have a tube screamer that I bought that I still need to take out of the box. So you're going to expect a straight out of the box with a tube screamer, and I'm going to compare that against my other tube screamer.
Ooh, okay.
Right,
okay.
the one I always use.
Yeah.
And then I'm planning on getting another rev head soon. So as soon as I get that, you can expect an unboxing of that one.
Good. Well then, yeah. Is there anywhere anyone can follow you on social media? Instagram, you want to plug me?
With the social media, it's usually like everything Paulo Rage, right? So I've got my Instagram. I've got, of course, we got Facebook, the band. You know, I would prefer people to follow the band more than anything. But of course, I have my own Instagram. Twitter, I don't go on much. Even the band Syryn, we don't go on our Twitter much. I call it the twatter, but
yeah, we're gonna link everything. Honestly, seriously, thanks again, man.
No problem, man.
I've been looking forward, like I said, just been following your work for a long time. So it's nice to see where you finally, ended up, and you guys aren't disappointing. You're running full fledged ahead. So excited to see what's next from you guys.
full steam ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna try to put it in the casting to joke, but we'll just leave those on the ice. I've
Keep your
already,
stick on the ice.
yeah, I've already seen enough social media.
I'm a love dealer, you wanna score? I'll give you my number, so give me